Okay, so Christian, this
Yeah.
is this is part two. Right now, I'm hearing an echo.
Yes, it's bad because
It's enough to it is hard to now it's gone. Now I don't hear it. Okay,
okay. Hopefully it
so
stays like.
yeah, starting again. Um, this is part two of the talk that we were having that is actually attempting to integrate several different aspects of Satipatthana together, especially in regard to how the Satipatthana fits in so well with the Paticca and how Anapanasati is the actual method of practicing this.
Mhm.
And so it all ties together, and that when the mind is stable and fit for work, the mind can see these processes, and that the more stable the mind is, and the earlier in that process we can see. So basically, what happens is that um, we kind of back up from the things that wind up being the most obvious into the things that become less and less obvious. Your screen flipped again.
Ah, sorry. Better?
Yes. Nope, not yet. No, it's still the same.
Okay.
It's still sideways. Everything is sideways. There you go. Now it's correct.
The thing is, yeah. Yeah, it will do that again, maybe.
Technology sometimes is so much hassle, so much work. Um, until you recognize, oh, we give ourselves the hassle while we're just playing. We're just playing with these toys.
Maybe it
All the
stays like
bad feelings
I
are
put it like that.
all right. That'll be okay. I think that Skype can handle that well enough.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Um, in any case, one of the things that we were just about to talk about was within the Anapanasati, the tie in with all of these pieces is actually the tie in of investigation. So then the third part of the body, there's the investigation to investigate the body. Then in step seven is the investigation of the mental sankharas, the Sita Sankara. But in this regard, there's two levels of that. One is going to be thinking, and the other one is going to be emotional or feeling. And those both have to be investigated. The question is, are we going to be able to get the skills to do that investigation if we don't learn to investigate the things that are really easy to investigate first? Because these feelings can be really difficult to deal with. But surprisingly enough, many students, soon after they meditate, they begin meditation, they begin to see that all that old stuff is there, and so they can begin to start dealing with it really early. I've actually seen one student, at least recently, that doesn't actually need any meditation skills at all because he's got all of the things. All he needed to do was to put together, and he's come up with that he's the emperor, and he can just be happy anytime he wants to. And all he has to do is remember to be happy, and there he is, and he does. And his whole family is really surprised at the change this guy's gone through. And so that's what we need to do. But most folks in the West, especially, are so dug into our old ways, and we cannot see the suffering that we're creating for ourselves. And this is what happened to that guy that I was just mentioning, and that is the reason why he was able to almost spontaneously take on the attitude of the lion and become a, let us say at least a Buddhist in practice, or Buddha in practice. That he's still practicing, but he's feeling really good at it. And that is that he can see the suffering. When someone really sees dukkha, when we begin to really see it, we really do want out of it. We want to escape. And that's what this guy had. He had such a dose of dukkha he was giving himself. And when that was pointed out, what he was doing, he said, yuck, I don't want to do that anymore. So now anytime he becomes afraid, he's up on that fear. Anytime that old past ideas come, he can just throw them right out because he knows that's suffering, and that's what he's got the point. All right? So this is the whole idea that if we can come to that, if we can actually see suffering, if we can really see the Four Noble Truths immediately, then we don't need to practice. There we are. So we have to practice many times because we are so deluded that we do not actually see the suffering, that we can go around in a state of anxiety and not even know that we're in a state of anxiety. Mm-hmm. It's like a fish in the water. The fish doesn't know he's in the water until you pull him out of the water. Now the question is, does he want back in the water or not? In that case, the analogy is upside down. But being under pressure at work or whatever like that, everyone wants to get out of it. But what they don't understand is that it's pressure at work means the work is putting me under pressure. Oh no, you're using the excuse of work to put yourself under pressure. That's the hard part, is to recognize all suffering is self-created, and that whenever we create suffering, the method and activities of creation of the suffering is then stored for next time. So that then completes the loop that we were talking about, so that when that old stuff comes up, it flavors how we feel, and if we are not wise at that point in contact, we will then ignorantly want things. So the sequence in Paticca Samuppada goes, we want comes from the feeling I like it. So I like it goes to I want it. I want it then grows to full on I gotta have it, or the actual concept of it is mine, it belongs to me. Mm-hmm. And you can see how that whole idea gets really strong in the sense of this is my country, which is actually a song that they taught us how to sing. All right, and you can see that in almost all the cultures is that they want the students to attach with an identity to a particular group or culture or religion or whatever like that. And so whenever the vagaries of the organization go up and down, then the people who are attached to that organization go up and down also, because they have that identification of this is me. Mm-hmm. All right, well, we do that with all kinds of things, but just showing you about organizations is just one example. In fact, people get attached to the feelings, and, well, this is just me. I'm just angry. Mm-hmm. All right, so they are really attached in that way. So as we march back down through the period of time, let us say that one kind of attachment is actually in the sense of being really angry and being in an argument with someone and trying to prove your point and not accepting his arguments, that kind of rah, 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 rah. And that happens on all kinds of levels, and one of them is sport team. My Liverpool team is better than your Manchester team, or Dallas is better than Denver, or whatever it is, something silly, but people get attached to those things. Well, in fact, what winds up happening is that the attachments that people have is part of our DNA. The attaching is part of our DNA. And so everybody goes around attaching themselves to this, that, and the other thing, and we do so ignorantly because it's built right into our DNA. So the first thing that we have to do is begin to see how that stuff is right there clearly in action, in the sense of this is mind. I identify with that. So that's the first stage, which is pretty late in this thing. So that's what tanha, the grasping and clinging, and then understanding I gotta let go of that. The next step is to watch how that action happens.
Before, do I do that in meditation also, or is this more exercise in my daily life where I reflect on how I identify with this sports team? Or can I do that also in meditation?
Both. But if you're sitting in meditation with a mind that's really clear and fit for work, your understanding will be better in the meditation. But then out in the daily life, you'll begin to see this stuff right in action, to the point of it almost hitting you. But you need to sit and reflect upon how the mind works, and this is what we're going through. In fact, I can give you the Pali for each one of these stages. So this is the point that we're working at, is how do these, we're working at least the halfway point of how do these feelings of liking and not liking, or the feeling of confusion, then lead to, for instance, anger. If I don't like something, and then I want to push it away, and it pushes back, and I say, oh no, I really want it to go away, and I keep pushing and pushing, we're going to push ourselves into an argument. So this is how it gets started. Go ahead.
So the starting point is to look, do I like this or not?
That's what exactly, that's where Bhikkhu Buddhadasa points at, is this is the point in time that we need to understand that whatever arises in the mind, we need to be there to see what it is that's coming up in the mind. Wisdom at the point of contact, so that feelings do not arise ignorantly, that they arise wisely. And if we know how feelings arise wisely, then even the feeling that is arisen can now be worked on, modified, taken care of, and in one regard, taken control of. That basically this whole process is learning how to manage and control your feelings so that you can feel the way that you want to. And we're also going to experiment with how do you want to feel? We're going after that, and then we're going to add a little bit more on top of that so that you begin to feel the way that you want to feel and stop feeling the way that you're in the habit of feeling. And this feeling point is that point in time that begins with liking and not liking. Now, one of the preludes to that is the wanting stage. The word that I use is intention. Why are we intending? For instance, if I get out of the chair, what was the reason? Why did I get out of the chair? What was I intending to do? What did I want?
Yeah, you wanted to change something.
You wanted to fix something. You wanted to change something. But the real question then is, what's so wrong? What's so desperately wrong? What's suffering I have that I would pull myself off of this comfortable chair and actually stand up and walk away? All right, the answer is, I wanted to go to the toilet, or I wanted to get a drink of water, or I wanted to go talk to the boss, or there's all kinds of things. But learning what our intentions are will then start helping us to look to how do we feel. All right, so the physical thing that's most easily seen, like we're in a fight or in an argument. And then we begin to say, oh, the reason I'm in the argument is because I had an intention of something. So now I'm beginning to watch intentions. When I see the intentions, then I can begin to see the underlying immediate feelings that I've got in this present moment, or in the very immediate past, that led to me wanting something. That's the way that we work with it, so that we begin to watch what we want, to become aware of the fact that our whole lives are driven by these three feelings: the feeling of confusion, the feeling of I don't like it, and the feeling of liking.
So that does mean that I look at the distractions which bubble up in my meditation. I try to look at them and see where they want to pull me.
What do you mean by distractions, and what do you mean by bubbling?
Something like a feeling I have to stand up. As you mentioned, this happens often during my meditation. Like, no, there's something important now, and this is more important than my meditation. And I try to get back to my breath immediately without giving it much attention. So that's
excellent. That's exactly right, because otherwise you'll find yourself in the kitchen and you don't even know how you got there.
But with what you just said, I understand that I have to look at this and see what's the feeling behind it, or the liking.
Yes. Okay, that's exactly right. What we're saying is, after you come from the point of tanha and recognizing tanha, we begin to start recognizing upadana, which is the actual wanting, the intention, and then we back to that, to the actual vedana, the feelings.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, and from there we back up even further, back through to begin to see how we feel is controlled by manufactured concepts.
Okay.
All right, just like you were talking about, manufacturing concepts about the body rather than actually experiencing the body. And all of this stuff ties right in there now, because that's what we're actually beginning to see, is most of the world that people live in is a conceptualized world and not the real world at all. And not only that, but the conceptualized world that we're creating is based upon our old memories and past. And so we basically want to live in the past, or at least a present that is polluted by the past or polluted by our ideas of how we want the future to be. So we're mixing the present moment with past. So now we're backing up even further in the Paticca Samuppada.
Okay.
All right. And so this is the march backwards. And the march backwards is actually being able to have the mind so sharp that we can see things that happen very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Because now the next level down is how to see things as they're manufactured. What is the actual process is putting all that stuff together. And then the next step down is when we start removing all of the perceptions that have anything to do with old past and start looking at consciousness directly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many times this is also called not taking any object at all. You just go into your sensory field and just float around and experience whatever there is to experience, but we don't land or light onto anything. We're just completely absorbed with being here now, without any perception, without any thoughts, and whatever thoughts we have are going to be the kind of thoughts that are very wholesome. One exactly would be, wow, this is nice. That kind of thought. This is good stuff. Like that. This is the kind of thought processes that are going to be there when you finally get down to that state. So a lot of it has to do with backing up. And how we got there was basically we were using the example of anger. So in the very beginning, the guy's angry, and he will deny it if you point it out to him. The next phase earlier than that is going to be that when he's reminded of being angry, he's very willing to come out of it. So when he can catch it, then he'll begin to stop because he's already recognizing that being angry is suffering. In the beginning, he couldn't even recognize he was angry. Then he wants to justify his anger. Then he wants to say, okay, I want to get rid of it. And then he begins to actually practice doing that. And then he begins to see that, oh, I used to get angry at this particular situation, but I don't anymore. Isn't that great? I'm actually becoming free of this anger. Mm-hmm. And then the next level down is going to be, You know, those kinds of things used to get me angry. I see all of those people over there doing all of that stuff, and they don't like what's happening. And poor guys, I used to do that too, but I don't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're getting pretty far along. And then the last, finally one is, I'm not even, it's not my business. I don't care what they're doing. I'm not even curious enough of what's going on to find out if there's anybody angry or not. So these are the stages that you'll go through, and if you recognize that, that's actually just walking or stepping back through the levels of Anapanasati in a big experiential way. But really how that happened was because of the deep insight that was happening generally on the cushion or in relationship to the experience on the cushion and seeing those things right out in the open. So beginning to recognize how your old feelings, old remembered feelings pollute. And we can put names on them, not in the sense of memories with visualizations and pictures and names and places or that, but rather old memories of things like anxiety itself,
Mm-hmm.
old feelings of fear that we've carried around our whole lives, old feelings of, in this case, also anger.
Mm-hmm.
The old feelings that pollute our current behavior. Mm-hmm. And we can begin to see that. And it's actually part of Anapanasati. It's actually step 7 is to see this stuff. And as we do...
The Tanha or the pollution?
Pardon?
Is step 7 seeing the Tanha or seeing the pollution?
Well, Sita Sankara would in fact encompass all of those things, but it has the emphasis on 2 aspects. One is, what are we thinking right now? What thoughts are we having? And are those thoughts wholesome or not? If they're wholesome thoughts, they get in and it's okay to abide in wholesome places. But if it's a hindrance that comes in, an unwholesome thought, then we want to remove it so that we can come back to that state of sukha, that state of satisfaction. The next thing, go ahead.
Do I have to look at the content of the thought, or do I just have to look at the feeling tone of it?
I'm going to let you experiment with that so that you get an expert at it.
Okay.
You might find that those 2 things are the same thing. But you play with that and experiment with it and see what's going on. But the important thing is that you can recognize and take control over whether you're going to allow that kind of thought in or not. And that you have a set of criteria. The criteria is this a hindrance in the sense of past, future, worry, remorse, regret, wanting something, wanting to get rid of something, doubts? Those are the hindrances, and when those exist, then that is in the mind, and it hinders us from being in a joyful state of here now, that are free from all of those things. Basically, this state of satisfaction is also a state of relief. Mm-hmm. Oh, what a relief it is. So we want to maintain that state, rather than starting to bubble and boil and churn again with both thoughts and also with feelings. And so this is also a time then to begin to examine the deeper feelings like anguish or disgust or anxiety, tension, the kind of feelings that bring hindrances to the surface. That in fact in the Pali it talks about that there is a deep fetter that is labeled and understood to be restlessness. And what that means is just being unsettled, that you're not satisfied. There's a deep longing for something or another, and that when that comes up, it experiences normally in the state of anxiety. But it can also be done in the sense of wanderlust, or it can actually lead people onto the spiritual path. The very thing that got them onto the path is the thing that they've got to get over. Some kind of cause-effect relationship there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So this deep. Go ahead.
No, the interesting point for me was that the structure of the first sermon reflects what people call the five recollections are typically a beginner's exercise. Like people do it every day, think about death. So for me, that was quite interesting. That here the point where he gets started, which was tied in some exercises also.
Right. So the very beginners, this is also not only very beginners practice, but it's the same practice. But as we get skilled in it, we go deeper and deeper into the same old stuff. Mm-hmm. The very reason that we came to practice meditation, that we begin to get, if we're practicing correctly, we begin to get experiences and understandings of at least the concept of the freedom of suffering, and at least the concept of what suffering is. But later, as we get out of the conceptual stage and into the reality of it, and the easy way to do that is through the body. Stop conceptualizing the body and be in one, because you've got a real body there. And that's exactly where you are now. And that's excellent. Congratulations. That's excellent, excellent practice to be able to actually experience the body as a body rather than experience as a mental conception of a body. Mm-hmm. Well, then we're going to be able to do that with everything, so that we come out of all of those concepts and conceptualizations, because basically the conceptualizations are selecting data and putting it together so that we can get an understanding of what's going on. By doing that, we automatically reject stuff that doesn't fit into the model. And where that comes and plays very strongly is in situations such as tribalism, racism. This religion is better than that religion. That political party is better than that one. This nation is better than that one. You know, the whole 9 yards of that. And that's built upon conceptualizations of what is right, what is wrong, but it's almost always, most importantly, that it is what I attach to as I, me, and mine. For instance, if there is no attachment to the Republican or the Democrat Party, then we can laugh at both of them. But if I'm over here with the Democrats, then everything that happens with the Republicans, I'm going to hate them. Right? And everything that the Democrats win on, I'm going to be happy about that, because whatever the Democrats want to feel good about, I got to feel good about too, et cetera, like that, except that even the Democrats are not on the same page. Now you got to define, which kind of Democrat am I? Am I a progressive? Am I conservative or a centralized or whatever like that? And here we go round and round with dividing. And basically the whole idea is that it has to do with, who am I? Mm-hmm. What is my identity? And when we give up on having identities about things, we begin to come out of those conceptualizations and become living in the real world more and more. Why? Because, in fact, those conceptualizations are things that can be and are clung to, just merely ideas. And we cling to all kinds of ideas, including ideas of who I am and whatnot, and that colors then our perception of reality. But when we stop coloring our reality and just see reality as it is, this is really marvelous. Quite a show nature is putting on. And quite a show the humans are putting on too. The question is, can you enjoy and just watch the show? Mm-hmm. Or do you have to be one of the players in this Actors Guild? Well, how do we do that? It's because we want to be on stage. We become attached to an idea of who we are. And that concept then becomes one of the actors on the stage. But when we don't want to be on the stage, when we don't take identification, when we drop our IDs about everything, then we can live in the here now. And that's back to that state of satisfaction. So that what we get to do is we get into that state of satisfaction, and then we're not going to allow any kind of thoughts about Democrats or Republicans to come into the mind to disturb the mind. That those two things are they're out of bounds. Political parties and nations and cabbages and kings and all of that kind of stuff is just not worthy of thinking about. What is worthy of thinking about is, this is suffering. I see it right here in front of me. This is the cause of suffering. I'm doing it myself. Mm-hmm. And so those are the kinds of thoughts that are worth having, so that we can really see clearly what's going on and still maintain that state of sukha, that state of contentment. Mm-hmm. And making that, from being in that state of contentment, making the mind really fit for work, so that we're actually now in a state of being able to examine our feelings. Because otherwise we don't really want to examine our feelings. Sometimes people in fact get the idea, well, I am my feelings. Whatever I feel, that's who I am, without ever recognizing, but what that means is that you are a servant to your feelings. And that whatever the feelings tell you to do, you've got to go with that. And we have that kind of stuff in our language, with the difference between go with your heart, go with your feelings. That's the reptilian brain that they want you to follow. And I'm saying, oh no, let's think this thing through. Let's examine this thing. Let's not follow feelings. Mm-hmm. Let's not follow those feelings. And in order to not follow the feelings, you got to actually know what it is that you're feeling.
Does that mean I have to go to places where I feel more feeling, like, for example, in the heart region or in the throat? In throat, I can feel.
I just had this conversation with a student, so I'll answer you this way just to freak you out. You asked me where to do it. The answer is overnight in a cemetery. Overnight, spend the night in a cemetery.
What does it mean?
It means to go experience your feelings when you're in the field of death. Mm-hmm. Go figure out how it is that you feel about things right now when you're in this field of corpses and tombstones and whatever like that. What kind of fears are going to come up? Mm-hmm. So putting yourself in actually stressful situations has been on the list of spiritual practices for all of these centuries. An example of that would be going barefoot. You want to experience the body? Go barefoot. Stop wearing shoes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So does that mean the 5 recollections, I can not only take them as a preparatory exercise for motivation, but also kind of make up this, turn the volume up of the suffering, and then look at the suffering?
Well, that's one way of looking at it exactly, is to turn up the heat. Mm-hmm. Begin to note. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you'll note is, hey, I can walk on that field of rocks. I can do that. Yeah, I know the sensations the feet have, but we can do that. Gives you strength of mind. The victim will say, oh no, this is too painful, please, I want shoes, I can't do it by myself. Mm-hmm. So yeah, walking barefoot, that's a good thing to start practicing. So take a walk around the neighborhood, for instance, without shoes.
Mm-hmm. So the actual practice is getting out of my comfort zone and experiencing that.
Yes. In fact, that's exactly right. Oh, that is in fact more right than you understand, because in fact the comfort zone is that area or place where the victim has made a shelter for himself. Uh-huh. It's kind of a hidey hole. You call it a comfort zone, and that's your world. And in fact, you're missing out on at least 100% of the real world because this hidey hole you're in, you made for yourself anyway. Yes, coming out of your comfort zone in so many ways. And people do that. Come out in the sense of experiencing things. Travel would be one. Boy, did I get a load of things when I went to India first. So there's
I wonder what this means for meditation, because I feel very comfortable there.
Yes, but can you feel very comfortable spending the night in a graveyard?
Probably not.
Why not? It's a very peaceful place. There's no one there that's going to harm you.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never tried it.
But that's the whole point. This is, in fact, what the Buddha did. He sent students to the charnel ground. Do you know what the charnel ground is in the time of the Buddha?
Where people got buried?
No, it was a city dump for dead bodies.
Oh.
It was a city dump for dead bodies, which meant that not only was it dangerous because of the spooks and the ghosts and the ghouls and all of that for the monks, but it was also necessary for them to be on guard, because at night was when the wolves, the coyotes, sometimes the panthers came to clean things out. And so sometimes the bodies don't even get to go through the 10 stages of a corpse, which some people understand to be 10 different separate meditations. But believe me, the object is the same. To sit there with a dead body until it goes to bone. So these are the stages, and some of them happen quite quickly. First, it goes from warm to cold, and then from cold, it goes to rigor mortis, which means that this body gets really, really stiff. And in the process of it stiffening up, sometimes it makes movements. And after rigor mortis sets in, then it's really hard to manipulate the body. But you can. And so that's what the morticians do. They get the bodies from the hospital that were in rigor mortis because the nurses didn't check on them overnight. And so that's their job, is to get the bones to straighten out so it'll fit in the coffin. So that's normally what happens just the first day. But after that, then the body starts to become, everything breaks down on the inside, so that by the next day, boils and pusses and things like that are coming out, and also the changing of the colors of the body and stuff like this. This is part of the reason why the Muslims have a ban. It's part of their religion that a body needs to be buried on the same day, or if after sundown the next morning, because they don't want to deal with a body that's going into the state that I'm talking about now. But that's a good state for a body to be in, for a human meditator to sit in front of and watch it, saying, hey, here I go. But for my own conceptual ideas, this is me, this is what's happening, and this is going to happen to me soon enough. And so we begin to get down to those real deep fears, because ultimately the real fear, and the only real fear that anyone has ever had, is the fear of death. And it is so deep and so real in people that, in fact, because I've kind of gotten over it, but I did it by doing literally hundreds of funerals. As a Buddhist monk in the United States, boy, did we do a lot of funerals. And so I've seen a lot of dead Asians. But the point that I'm making is that it's hard for me to recollect just how much this is an issue for every one of us. This fear of death. That this fear of death is exactly what the young victim of age 14 feels when he sees the bully come around the corner at his school. That panic, that fear. And that fear is a false fear. That kid probably is not going to get harmed by that bully unless he acts like enough of a victim so that he can become victimized.
Mm.
But if he just marches right on, and when the bully says, hey, 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 you know, or grabs you by the arm, you just keep on walking. You're not interested. He's got nothing to say because you're not interested in him. But if you become afraid of him, he will then attack you. By the way, I see dogs in the front yard do exactly that. The people who are most afraid of the dog is the one that they go after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a study recently.
So now that we're understanding that, we can understand also that being fearless has a lot to do then with cleaning out our fear of death.
Mm-hmm.
To get to understand we are going to die. It's going to happen. And so that's part of a great deal of the practice of the Buddha. In fact, there's a whole sutta dedicated to this, number 4 in the Majjhima Nikaya, about the fear of death. And what the Buddha did is that he would seek out lonely, abandoned places that were in the times of the Buddha considered spooky. In fact, that's why he went to Bodh Gaya, was because it was famous in that area for being a very spooky place.
Mm-hmm. So in my meditation, I tried that once, and it was quite interesting. I tried to look at what is uncomfortable at this moment. Would this be the approach you're suggesting, like looking at what is preventing me from just being there, just seeing the breath?
Yes, exactly so. But there's also an alternate view of doing exactly the same thing. And that is, what is it like to feel like, in fact, there is nothing that is an obstruction right now, that I can actually just sit here and feel good?
Mm-hmm.
What is that third noble truth?
The third?
The third noble truth.
It's
what is it like to be free from suffering?
Yeah.
Do you know? Do you know what it feels like to be free from suffering?
I don't know. I'm deluded.
Well, go look and inspect this to figure out what it is like, so that you'll know what it is like to be free from suffering. Because that state of being free from suffering is exactly the state of sukha that I'm talking about. This state of satisfaction is the state free from suffering. This is one of the most important qualities of that first jhana.
Mm-hmm.
Is being free from suffering, and being free from the hindrances, so that we can experience the here now in its marvelous situation and note it well, because we haven't shut the mind down. It's not in a state of thoughtlessness, so it's actually seeing and recording and whatever, and in that same time it's also making sure that we maintain that state of satisfaction. And so this is the right way to practice, is find out how you get yourself really satisfied, and then how can you maintain that satisfaction. But most people sing the song that Rod Stewart wrote. I can't get no satisfaction. You know that song? All right. That is the normal song that people sing. Mm-hmm. And so how can you become satisfied? Well, now what we're talking about is that the satisfaction comes from going back to feelings, learning how to properly manipulate that feeling of feeling good. Mm-hmm. Because normally we leave the feelings associated with the senses, in the sense of playing with the outside world. But now we're going to take a hold of that feeling good in a kind of a mental or a spiritual way, so that we can work with it and manipulate it. Because in fact, most people throughout their entire lives are actually looking for, how can I feel good? This is why they argue. This is why they compete with each other. They're looking for a win so that they can feel good, because the feeling good has the quality that they like, and it also leads to the quality of feeling secure. So now we need to learn that we're already quite experts at being confused. we're already experts at being unhappy and ill-willed and angry and upset and uptight and wanting help. We already know we're experts at those kind of feelings. But what we're not really good at is being expert in how good can you really feel. Let's examine this feeling good part. And the Buddha recommends that you examine that and promote it. And so how good can you feel then would then be under the label of piti. How good can you feel?
But
feel like a champion. Go ahead.
But before I do that, I have to see how the suffering is manufactured.
No, in fact, by being in this state of rapture and sukha, that's how you can see the dukkha.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise,
so
I can't.
In fact, you've got the cause effect backwards. But when you understand how anapanasati is to be practiced, you'll see that, once you start manufacturing this really, really good feeling, this feeling of winning, this feeling of success, and that all of this ties together is even several different places in the Anapanasati Sutta that points back to this. One is the description of the Iddhiyapada, because this is Iddhiyapada in action, is this sukha, this success, this satisfaction that we need to cultivate. This is actually step in Anapanasati mainframe. This is Vedana. This Vedana area means that we have to become very, very good at manufacturing very, very good feelings. And it's from that state of feeling very good, that's where you do not want to let any dukkha come in. Because now you really do have enough sukha that you can see dukkha for what it is. It's almost like it's really hard to see dukkha when it's staring you in the face. But when you rise above that dukkha and it's trying to get you from the bottom, you can see it really, really clearly because you've got a much stronger mind now and you've got a position. And that position is a position of satisfaction, sukha, feeling really good about yourself, and you do not want that dukkha to come grab you and pull you down. So that's how you can see it. While it's staring you in the face, it's got nothing on you because you're already there. But if you've already risen above that dukkha, now you can see it clearly when it comes in and invades the mind in the sense of hindrances. Go ahead.
What I hardly understand is how these two things now relate to each other. The first part is about being seeing the dukkha, and the other part is about acting. Does it mean that I shouldn't see the dukkha until I am at this good place, or is it also a good exercise to do that beforehand?
You're working too hard to try to get it too detailed. A better way of understanding this is the natural approach as opposed to the formalized approach that you got to do this and then that and then this and then that. Think of it as whenever that stuff comes up, the question is, can you handle it or not as it's coming up? When it arises, are you going to be there for it?
Okay.
And that's a much better way of looking at it, rather than saying, do I have to have the sukha before I see the dukkha, or do I have to have dukkha? Well, that depends. There's some people never have any sukha, but they can see the dukkha so strongly that they got to do something to get out of it. And so they do. An example of that would be Eckhart Tolle. And that's his story, that he felt so bad that he had to do something about it. Well, a lot of people are like that. They just, when they feel so bad that they've got to do something about it, they don't wind up doing the right thing. Luckily, you've called to a place where we know that we've got the correct path. And if you practice correctly, then you'll get the proper results. But it takes a bit of an education because it's kind of a complete package. But once you understand it, that you've got the body and you're waking that up, and now you're going to have to wake up some feelings. But you're also going to be guarding the mind, and you're going to be guarding the mind from the place that you woke up the feelings so that you can begin to practice feeling really good and then maintain that really good feeling. And so it's going to take quite a lot of steps like that for you to figure out where your footholds are to come to that state of absolute, oh, I like this so much, I want to stay here. I do not want to leave this state. That's what, but it's not the immediate goal in the sense of I can get there next week. But it's the immediate goal in the sense I'm going to do it right now in this breath to the best that I can do it. I'm going to get joy and satisfaction. I know that these are skills to be developed. Let me give them a go. How good can I feel right now? Can I make myself feel like a champion, like a winner? Mm-hmm. And we can when we understand how valuable and important the Dhamma is and that you're getting good results from practicing the Dhamma. And in that regard, you're on your way to becoming humanity's best. That ought to make you feel really good that you're climbing to the heights of humanity, up to the state of nobility of the mind. Turn you right into a lion, grabs you right by the victim and throws that victim out. So this is the quality that we're shooting for. How good can you make yourself feel? And so in that regard, we also look at it from the fact that everybody's out there looking for stuff. They're looking to feel good. And they're willing to try all kinds of things. That's why there's so many different sports, so many lines of clothing, so many different colors of lipstick, so many different automobiles. Everybody's looking and looking and looking and looking and wanting and wanting and wanting and wanting. And what are they wanting? They're wanting to feel good. And here you are manufacturing feeling good right here while we're talking. It's infectious even. So that you feel good. And when you begin to feel really good, you recognize, well, oh, that's all I wanted anyway. And now that I know how to feel good, I don't want anything. I'm perfectly content in my whole life. And that's in the state that you kind of arrive at, but it's not really an arrival. It's the kind of thing that you sort of visit from time to time. We kind of go back and forth on that train until eventually the train stops. But we visit that state more and more often of, hey, this is nice. There's no place to go and nothing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that speaks against all this. Well, there's a community of stage thinking and all that stuff that speaks directly that this is the wrong attitude. That searching for a state of...
The wrong attitude is the attitude of a winner, and the only other option is the attitude of a victim.
No, for me, this stage thinking now, I have to do this and then I have to do that, and I'm never at the goal during my meditation.
Oh. Well, guess what? There's no place to go and nothing to do. Just all you have to do is just feel satisfied that there's no place to go and nothing to do. You've already arrived. You're already there. At that point in time, in that state of sukha, you're already enlightened. What else do you want? You're satisfied. Mm-hmm. So work on becoming satisfied, working on developing enough joy so that you're satisfied with it. And that's actually quite an accomplishment. But it's also easy to do. Every time you think about it, you do it.
Well, the thing is, in my meditation, at the beginning, I feel I'm less satisfied than at the end. So there's natural progress towards that. So,
okay, all right. I'm not disagreeing with that. In fact, that's what I would expect to happen. That the more you practice correctly, the better you get at it. The problem is when students are not practicing correctly, because they're not getting better at anything other than not practicing correctly.
Mm-hmm. So as long as I can see that I'm doing better and better, as long as I know that I'm practicing correctly.
I'm going to have to say both yes and no to that. Yes, of course, in the way that you're speaking of it. But that, in fact, I would call that investigation, to investigate how the mind is, to investigate progress that you're making, to note what's happening in the here now, in the relationship to the here now that you already have kind of in the immediate past.
Mm-hmm.
So that would mean that it's not wise to compare ourselves to a meditation experience that we had months or years ago, but that's out. But doing it day by day or this week, how's things this week, that kind of thing is exactly the right way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so then the next part would be that part of the investigation has to be both thorough but also very gentle.
Mm-hmm.
The investigation of how am I doing now, don't compare it to last week unless there's just insight in there. Rather than, oh no, poor me, the victim this week, it cannot match up to the lion of last week. So that kind of investigation is kind of dangerous. But rather to note that things do go up and down and that your job is to keep track of really what's going on. And the deeper you look, the more things will reveal themselves to you. And the more you push out of the mind unwholesome states, then the less power they will have. That these emotional states get ground in when they come in and run and run and run and run and run. But now you're in the state of that satisfaction, that state of sukha, that state of being content with the way things are. When you start seeing that thing run, you say, wait a minute, get out of here. If I let you run, you're going to pull me right into it. So out you go. I don't want to think about that kind of stuff. And so you come back to the here and now with great pleasure. Look at me. I can throw that stuff out of the mind. Ha, 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 ha. Those kind of thoughts don't have any power over me anymore. This is the kind of attitude that we want to develop. A playful, gentle, happy attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same kind of attitude that you would then develop and manage with the anxiety. Wow, I see that stuff. Ah! Used to run my life, but not anymore. Now it never comes up, or now it doesn't come up at all, or I remember it used to come up, or wow, what was that like? I forgot. So that's the progression that things happen over time, so long as we keep practicing this in this moment, that when unwholesome thoughts arise, we push them out. We don't get them any power. And we give all of the power and all the mental strength to the wholesome thoughts about what do I feel? Where am I? What's happening right now? Wakey, wakey. Where's the dukkha? Oh, there's no dukkha. Wow, isn't that really great? I really like it when there's no dukkha. This is the kind of way to start living your life. Begin to live the life, in fact, that you know already how is a really, really high quality life to live.
Mm-hmm. So investigation just means look for the dukkha and see if you can get away from it.
Basically, yes.
Because I've never understood it. So.
Yes, that's exactly what you're doing. That's the goal of it. But in the process, you're going to identify a lot of things in the way or along the way that point to where the dukkha came from. In the sense that you're going to be seeing experiences and old feelings and things, old things that you like, They used to drive your life, but now that you're very happy and satisfied with it, those things don't drive your life anymore. So that's the way that you have to develop that state of sukha, so that then you're no longer attracted to the things that you used to be attracted to, because you've already got the feelings that you wanted by going out to get those things. And by doing that, that means you keep practicing that over and over again, which means that bad feelings like anxiety, tensions, worries, sadness, restlessness, any of that comes up, the quicker you see it, the better off you are. So that you can throw that stuff out too.
Is there any order in which the hindrances should be dealt with, or just as they come up?
Yes, as they come up. That's the order.
Because sometimes there is more than one hindrance. Sometimes I cannot see any hindrance at all. So
when you're free from hindrances, congratulate yourself. Wow, isn't it wonderful to be free from hindrances?
So having a thought at that point is not a problem.
No, so it depends upon what the thought is. If it's a thought about dead granny, that I wouldn't say is a worthwhile thought. But it's a thought. But if it's a thought about, wow, isn't it nice to be free from hindrances, then that's a really, really good thought to have. What freedom it is to have a mind that's free from all of the stuff that used to weigh it down. Those are good thoughts to have. Thoughts of freedom. Thoughts of security, thoughts of success, thoughts of satisfaction, thoughts of gratitude, thoughts of generosity, thoughts of wealthiness, overabundance of any and everything that you want. So that there's nothing left to want. You're completely satisfied. You're wealthy, in fact.
You said before that one of the steps there is to wake up the Vedana.
Yes, the waking up of the Vedana is the waking up of feeling good. The skill to be developed is the feeling of success, the feeling of wealth, the feeling of happiness, the feeling of success, the feeling of being a champion, the feeling of being a lion. The lion's roar, self-confidence and fearless. It has also the quality of being secure, safe, no worry. Okay, so start to develop that. Starts with gladdening the mind. Aha, I caught you, Mr. Hindrance. Well, I'm glad to be free from that. And then you just take it from there. How good can you feel?
Yeah, so maybe we leave it at that.
All right.
I think it's a good end. I thank you very much. It was some great insights in there for me. Yeah, so see you next week.
Okay. Learn to feel good. That beats feeling bad, don't it? And all you have to do is remember to feel that way. Remember joy. Remember to be joyful. That's a major part of the practice of the Buddha.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.